Yeah, good, thank you.
You don't look like someone that's fresh out of the beehive. What part of? You're missing the pocket square, mate. What's going on?
Hey man, 50 days in lockdown will do it to you. So this is what you look like after 50
Is
days of
that
being locked down.
is that just 50 days growth, mate? Shit. What are you drinking down
No,
there in
no.
Willie's? You got some crazy shit going on.
No, I've got those Chinese whisper DNA in me, so it takes ages. This is about 2 years of growth, man. So look,
I,
I'm
I
I'm
don't
I'm pretty happy.
I don't try with when Movember comes around. I support the cause, but I can't mess with it. Mine looks
Yeah,
like a half-used toothbrush that's been like dismangled through like a cheese
yeah,
grater.
no,
You come
yeah.
very highly recommended. We haven't met before, but
Oh,
I've got a
okay.
note and it says Kirk leads the mahi on digital inclusion for the government, which is I'm very excited we can get into that. But it's also very non-bureaucratic. Awesome. He has great connections in Māoridom and with his own Pacific community as well as across government. Um, Yada yada yada. Good bastard. All right, cool. So here we are. Why did you get into politics and the government?
I don't. I think, yeah. I don't know if it's good politics, but I think essentially I fell into government, and part of that is in my nature to be able to serve through public service. So there was an opportunity that came about, and I took that and haven't looked back since. Yeah, so that's going back almost 27 years now.
How do you how do you like working with government? Is it very fast and agile and extremely efficient with time? How does it? How have you found it?
Oh, look.
That was a piss take, mate. I know it's slow. How have you enjoyed the last couple of decades
Well, yeah, yeah. Look,
in
look.
government?
I think you know the answer to that. But so yeah, look, I enjoy my time in government. I think there's real value in terms of being able to be in the machine and trying to look at places where you can make a difference. It's fair to say that my biggest extra grind in the space is about inequalities and diversity. So,
Oh, go on.
and so the critical thing for me is being able to be an agent of change around those areas. Can be hard work, but you need a few of us people in the system to be able to hold people to account, to make sure that the public service, delivers to the needs and expectations of the public. And so that's my burden to bear. So I've taken on board that. And in saying that, I work with some amazing people, intellectuals. And it's taken probably almost 20 years to understand truly what my role is in terms of being able to sit in the government agency space. So, yeah, it's exciting times. I was just thinking back when I first started, um, Jim Bolger was our Prime Minister.
Yep.
And so,
Was that
through
91?
that, yeah, it's way back then. Yeah, so I would have started around 95, 96. And
Okay.
so um, in that time, we've had three women prime ministers. So we had Jenny Shipley, Helen Clark, and now Jacinda Ardern. So, that's something I can talk to my grandchildren about and their grandchildren about being able to be part of a sea change of leadership around some of that diversity. So it's cool. So, and I got to witness that within the government. You know, the other important thing too I've learnt is when I first entered into public service, it was about process. It was about political sensitivities. It was about procedures. But again, as I've gotten older and wiser, it's about having a purpose. And so finding that purpose is really critical if you want to kind of withstand some of the challenges, but also see some of the advances. So that's really important.
Um, COVID stuffed the world up.
Yes,
New Zealand's coming back out into mix. Not relative, not unscathed because we've had some tragedies health wise. How do you
yes.
feel with? So what's your actual official title within government at the moment? What's how do they name you?
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So look, I'm not. My title is strategic advisor, and my portfolio is digital inclusion, digital equity. So, being able to kind of lead some of the exciting developments through that space is working with agencies and through agencies to be able to ensure that we can support all New Zealanders get online digitally. There are some pain points because through our work we've estimated over 1 in 5 New Zealanders are digitally disadvantaged or struggle with digital. And I can talk a little bit about what that means, but so we've got a real big driver to make sure that we can support that 20% to get online and comfortable to participate, because truly through COVID-19, as you mentioned, it's exposed the digital divide, or actually inequalities in a way that's really sharp, and we're having to respond right across government to be able to meet those needs that are disadvantaged currently.
So let's go there for a second. Dig deeper to the split in the digital divide of the haves and have-nots, because it's quite massive, right? I mean, we had Ed Hyde, who's the chief customer officer for Chorus, on the show, and he was saying, 10 years ago when they were doing all this fiber rollout, so many people gave them shit, blah, 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 blah. And now it's the flipping savior for so many of these businesses that are now being able to go online. So, and no one's questioned that tech wouldn't be able to do it. So tech people would be like, oh, tech has saved the day. Great. But tech has saved the day for businesses, but potentially by the have and the have-nots has made that gap a bit bigger. How is that the case specifically?
Yeah, look, I think across the world, so Internet New Zealand's not alone in this, is that when we think about digital inclusion, people just think about connectivity. And connectivity is just essentially having the internet connection to your house. And that would be a blunt measure. When we talk about digital inclusion, what we're talking about is access, skills, motivation, and trust. And then underneath each of those elements, there's a level of complexity. So, for example, when we talk about access, we're talking about connectivity, and we're talking about affordability. Really create three key elements that you need to consider. In terms of skills, it's more than just turning a computer on and having some basic skills, though that's really helpful. But we want to move the population to more problem solving. And what do we need to do that? So skills programs are really important to wrap your head around that. Then motivation. We have a number of New Zealanders that probably do not see how essential internet or digital inclusion would be, particularly through an event like COVID-19. So we had a number of people that missed out through getting timely communications, being able to connect with whānau in a timely way, with a line, and access to essential services. So most people saw it as a bit of a hoha around motivation. So some of the things is, why should I use it versus I want to use it. And then the last element is trust. And so that's a huge area around, identity, data sovereignty, safety, and your confidence to be able to use. So when you think about digital inclusion, you've got to think about the whole package rather than just issue connectivity. So so the reason why digital divide has become quite a big issue, an emerging issue at the moment, is people realizing actually it wasn't just about connectivity, it was more than that. It's a combination of all these things. And as a result of that, we want to move to a place where everybody has the ability to participate in the digital world, so they can communicate, they can connect, they can get access to essential services, they can create, they can do a whole raft of things. And the research that tends to suggest that actually it leads to better social and economic well-being down the line. So if we start investing in that space, you'll see that we as a nation will benefit. But look, our experience is no different from any other experience across the other jurisdictions.
Yeah, so through that, right, you're talking about access and skills and motivation, trust. All these frames were in place pre-COVID, right, PC. During COVID, when it happened, where do you think New Zealand failed specifically in terms of from the digital or tech side through this that you felt were like, oh, we need to address this after? What bits did you see happen that you know needed to get addressed now? Where did your brain go to?
Yeah, so essentially what it was is our ability to respond immediately to those people that were digitally disadvantaged. How did so 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 we have the stat round based on census data that between 45 and 70,000 New Zealanders do not have any form of telecommunications. So they don't have access to a landline or they don't have access to an internet. How did they get support? So if we think about digital as a means to an end, and and you know, how could we respond to those populations most in need, particularly those that don't have any telecommunications, and then those that did. And this is where I've got to give big ups to telcos that have come to the picture and some of the agency partners where they're able to take off data caps and all the rest of
Yeah,
it
that was
to
awesome.
be able to respond. Yeah, yeah.
In that
yeah.
first week,
I
we
mean,
had Jason Paris and Jolly Hodson on. They said
mm,
they were in contact with each other through the mix, and everyone was just like, boom, same page, done, no data caps, next. Like it was not even
yeah,
a like I thought that was really cool. Just even through a time of
yeah.
community strife, everyone just pushed pause on the commerce and we're like, we can fight later, but now it's about the people. Could you imagine the uproar if they started trying to just do overages and all this other stuff? It would have been a flipping gong
I
show,
know.
dude. So no, like I
Yeah,
thought that made me
no.
very proud to
Yeah,
see that as a
yeah.
Kiwi. That was awesome. But yeah, sorry, continue. I just thought it was really
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
What's
yeah.
going on?
No, 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 no. And I think if anything, um, what it allowed us to do, because we had been doing this work for 2 or 3 years around understanding who are the digitally excluded, what does the definition of digital exclusion mean to New Zealand, how do we begin to achieve digital equity, is what came through it is this willingness to collaborate. And industry fronted up, community providers are putting up their hand and saying, look, we need help for these specific populations. Agencies that would work with the most vulnerable saying, look, how do we begin to use some of the intelligence that you have to be able to, support some of the decisions and leverage some of the policies we're making. So in some ways, I don't see it as oh no, we need to respond here immediately, but I see it as, oh wow, just seeing the whole sector starting to come together. And even now we're starting to have these conversations that we would have never had pre-COVID-19, so in some ways, the realities of COVID-19 has generated a coalition of the willing to make a difference in digital inclusion space because they all buying into the whole vision digital equity.
You were just talking about before. You saying was it 70 about 75,000 people in New Zealand don't have
Yeah,
access to any communication. So
yeah,
I don't look. I don't know the ins and outs. What's the split of that 75 being rural away from anyone, or in the city and poor and homeless, or in a pretty bad social situation? Is that a 50-50 kind of thing? Like what's the
yeah,
split there? Do you know?
yeah. So what we know is that if I take a step back, the most disadvantaged communities at the moment, according to the data we have, and we have only got really good data for access element, is around is so they come through in terms of when we identified where the 70,000 are situated. It's usually where Māori are resident or where Pacific is resident or remote rural areas. That's where we've got a bit of work to begin to support those populations. We'll probably dig up some more data, and I could be proven wrong around where that is, but currently that's what we've got at the moment, and we're working with that. What we also know is that affordability is a really critical issue to be able to get access online for most vulnerable populations. So we did a bit of research last year. We commissioned it actually through the Motu research. And the groups that were highlighted in terms of being most digitally excluded or disadvantaged were Māori, Pacific, people with disabilities, unemployed, people living in social housing, seniors, particularly those over 75, and rural communities over between 10 and 25,000. So it'll be interesting to do, this is before COVID-19, and given that the sector and industry have moved really, really quickly to be able to support And like my education colleagues done a fantastic job to be able to roll out connections and devices net, what that would look like post-COVID. And we need to build momentum. So we still know that there's still a gap there, but given that the efforts of the sector now, what does that look like post-COVID? And is that sustainable is another question. For us, it's about making sure that the interventions we put in now are going to be enduring and sustainable. So when we talk about those communities, that's who we basically need to reach.
It feels like when you overlap those that are digitally excluded to those that are coloured, there seems to be a clear correlation.
Oh yeah, like everything else, bro. Yeah.
Why is that?
And that's a fair. Oh look, I think people need to realise that digital is a means to an end. So actually, the heart of it is there's inequalities that exist, and again, COVID-19 has exposed that in a real sharp way. It's always been there. And so even us achieving digital equity is not going to resolve the issues of poverty, resolve the issues around that are systemic, that have displaced Māori for a long time. So we've just got to be really mindful that whilst we're trying to achieve digital equity, part of what we're trying to do now is making sure that the social inequalities don't increase, and we've got to try to hold them as much as we can so we can take care of the other stuff that undermines some of that. And so, as again, part of being brown, as you called it out, is there is that bit where we've got a lot of evidence that's come through where people talk about the experience with that they are disadvantaged as soon as they walk in the door. I mean, and I've had a number of experiences in my lifetime where I buy a house, like my wife she's Māori, but she doesn't look Māori. We designed a plan that she'd walk in first, get registered, all the rest of it, for an open home, for example, and then I would wait 30 seconds to walk in, and I wouldn't get looked at. It's mainly because probably how I look, probably, but that.
I'm smiling because I think,
and we have to try to set. We have to set new preconceptions around some of that stuff. And part of that's the role of media and government, is to be able to dispel and challenge some of those preconceptions. We are capable, man. We are able to input into good decision making, and I think again, this is built on years of an institution of doing it a particular way and not necessarily the best way. And so we're seeing outcomes that, particularly for Māori and Pacific, where we continue to be disadvantaged, or we're not at the starting line in some of those conversations. And so how do we change that?
It's so tricky when you start getting into that world of judgment with colour, because it's almost like you're disadvantaged optically, and then societally, and then now technologically, and it's just another thing. It's like, fuck, here we go. Just make it tougher for us. Why don't you? I get it. Do you feel digital access? Do you think access to the internet should be a human right, and Wi-Fi for every New Zealander? Do you feel, is it at that level, or is this let's support what we've got, or is it throw the hammer? We are in a world of tech, and part of what this government and this nation stands for is everyone should have access to that tech, and that is a human right. Wi-Fi is a right. Is that a thing yet, or is that where their thinking's at, or how do you feel when I say that?
Yeah, look, it warms my heart actually. So part of it is that I personally believe that that everyone should have access to high-speed internet, affordable high-speed internet, or not free free internet, have a device and all the software and that's relevant for them to engage the digital world and have the right skills, so everybody should. So all of that should be a basic human right, and we should be able to put the appropriate programs in place to support that. And I believe that there's a real strong support for that. I'll get challenged with the fact that so is everything else. Health should be that, and I'll say, yeah, cool. But I'm talking about digital because it helps particularly connect people. And as we've seen through COVID-19, people were desperate to connect with loved ones. People were desperate to hear the latest communications, from the Prime Minister, who's our leader, about saying, and this is why we need to do level 4, this is why we're going to level 3, so people feel comforted by those messages in a timely way, and people need to be able to access essential services. So for a long time, the rhetoric from our colleagues, no fault of theirs, but it's just saying that, look, to people that were digitally excluded, go online and register on the site, or when they call the helpline, they says, the helpline's response would go, can you register online your issue? And people are not in that position to do that. So we need to make sure that we had other channels available to be able to support communication. We also needed to back our intermediaries, which I believe is happening, and who are working with people that are digitally disadvantaged, so they can ensure that they are looked after through this process. So, yep, when it comes to times of crisis, absolutely, digital is a human right that everybody should have access to. And so we've got this thing going, digital equity by 2030, where everyone should be able to participate and engage the digital world and benefit from them. And so if we work backwards from there, what does that look like?
So is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing. So 2030, that's a thing.
Yeah, you hit it first here. You go up just for you. 2030, digital equity by 2030. We're going to push it.
I like it. I think that's great. I mean, I remember 3-4 years ago, I was at this little think tank kind of corporate Illuminati thing, which was crazy, and Rob Campbell was there, and he stood up and said, and I didn't know that Rob was Rob, I just was like, some dude in a sweatshirt just standing up talking shit, and he goes, if we're trying to make one move for New Zealand, why not have a smartphone in every hand of every New Zealander? He just was like, super simple, and I'm like, that's what? Like, my brain just wasn't there, and then obviously, talked into it, and this is the wording around that has been there for a while, but it's more the fact too of, if it's very clear in a digital world, and for comms and whatever else, if there's a right, how does that get navigated? Because then I'm sure as soon as you start going around, we're going to supply hardware or this and that, then the next thing it's like, there'd be a massive backlash of, I don't want to pay for iPhone 10s for homeless people, stuff that I don't want to pay for, so there's this balance of how do you, I guess, give accessibility to technology to enable them to communicate and be plugged into the world versus commercial sensibilities that that the people will go along with. So there's these different new ways to think of it. I'm sure obviously that's a political thing which they've got a decade to navigate, but it's become very clear that no one's giving chorus shit now for ripping up all those sidewalks 10 years ago. Everyone was pretty flippin' stoked that they had publicly listed billion-dollar companies still trading with staff working remotely. Imagine if this shit happened 10 years ago without that. The economy would have shut down. Like, the actual economy would have shut down, not just like, if this was 2009 and this rolled through, man. So I think tech has saved the day. Not save the day. Tech was the resuscitation machine that enabled us to get through this piece, so we could at least have some sort of revenue for businesses and people still kind of working. When you see the future of what you hope the digital landscape in New Zealand could look like within the next 2 years, what would you like to see change or get driven down, especially using the momentum of after COVID AC?
Yeah, so I think in some ways, what I'd like to see is that everyone has the option. No, actually, everyone is connected digitally, and so people can opt out of that. But we basically roll out in 2 years. We see some of the vulnerable populations, I call called out earlier, that we have responded in a way that meets their needs and that they're building on their digital future for communities, particularly Māori and Generation Z. How do we support this up and coming generation to be able to be digitally savvy, because they're going to be huge contributors to the economy moving forward. So certainly Generation Z, Māori, in terms of making sure that they're digitally equipped to be able to, and they need to determine what that looks like for the future, and then also making sure that all our vulnerable cohorts can connect and communicate quite freely online. So 2 years, I think we can happen. I get told told about 2030 is too long. So I think I've got some ambitious enthusiasts around me that think we can do this in 5 years. So that's a good stepping stone. I mean, you know, when we go to the backs of the points around making a basic human right, we can look at other countries and look at their examples. You know, Finland, for example. You know, there's Singapore. You know, and so part of it is what can we learn from there, and then we've got to make sure that we entrust the proper regulation frameworks to ensure that people are safe online as well. So maybe we have that all in place. In 2 years, you're saying 2 years.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh, actually, one more thing.
Yeah, go.
We need, yeah, one more thing is a key thing is about making sure we support our COVID-19 has also exposed our need to be able to pivot around our small businesses. So how do we support?
Go there.
Small business, yeah.
People were bitching about this last budget thing, saying small businesses got tapped and all this other stuff. So yeah, what's your buzz there?
Yeah.
Obviously, your personal opinion, not professionally, so you get fired. But go on.
No, look, I think more than anything is that for a long time, as small businesses are trying to transition into the digital world, COVID-19 has obviously put the acid on to make sure that in order to survive and sustain business, then they need to look at how digital supports them to do that moving forward. And so, you know, how do we train, you know, people that are currently going to be unemployed through this process, give them the right skills to be able to engage the workforce in a way that they can offer extra skills. Now it's a hard time for a number. I've got a couple of friends that have through the process have, you know, are really struggling through this process, but they're still starting to examine, you know, and reassess how they pivot their business to be able to using digital, because they would laugh at my work all the time, saying that digital is just a phase, and now they're asking me, how do we pivot using digital to be able to support their business moving forward? So, you know, it's really important, and we have a workforce that requires that support. So maybe that's something that I believe that we can get behind. They're a significant contributor to GDP, man. So we just need to do it. Yeah.
What do you think in your, you know, you've been in the game there for what, like 20 plus years now in sort of government and that sort of that space. What's the biggest thing that frustrates you the most about the way it has been for the last 20 years when it comes to government?
Yeah, government, I think, so, I mean, it hasn't been all rosy been in government. So there have been times where I've been frustrated with the bureaucracy, the number of briefings to be able just to provide a minister information, you know, and think, is this good use of taxpayers' money? You know, you know, we have to write a briefing about a briefing about a briefing. You know, like it's kind of really in my early days. But I've come to accept that actually, you know, if you don't get caught up in the bureaucratic processes and you think about your purpose in public sector and you think about the people, then it makes it a lot more easier in terms of what your role in the machine is. And so, yeah, so certainly the amount of pushing paper here and there. Sometimes there's projects, and I get it, that you've been working on for a very long time, and then suddenly there's a pivot to say, actually, that's no longer a priority, and you've just got to drop it. It just happens. So all this time and investment that you've spent working up a project, getting it ready, and then suddenly you get told, oh no, it's no longer a priority. We need to redirect all the resources to this area. that can be frustrating as well. So, and I'm sure that happens everywhere else,
Everywhere
not just
totally
in
is the
government.
same
But
thing.
yeah. So,
When you first walked into the government world, what percentage of those around you were brown?
yeah. So, look, I couldn't really answer it, but even now, as I walk in a number of meetings, so yeah, there wasn't a lot of people
What, like
back then.
10%?
Nah, I doubt it, man. I wish.
Oh, like 5, 3, 1? Is it just you? Like, are you the only brown
Oh
person in Wellington?
yeah. No. Look, yeah, no, there would have been. Yeah, it's been a lonely place, and if you're looking for color as a way of a level of comfort in this space.
Like what? Give me
But
a
yeah, no,
number, like
definitely.
5%?
Oh, bro, less
What?
than 1%, bro.
What?
Yeah,
1% in the whole government?
when I say nah, look, there'll be some stats somewhere they'll be able to pull
Yeah.
out right now currently. Yeah, but I think it's growing. We're starting to see, people, um, you know, a bit more diversity coming in. There's still a lot more work, and there's a lot of champions across the government sector trying to promote that in terms of making sure that that. It's not about the color of your skin, but certainly that giving opportunities for people from diverse backgrounds to be able to pursue opportunities for public service
Totally.
coming through. I
So it's got
sit in,
better.
I sit in, yeah, look, well, maybe yeah, I think it's gotten better because I think there's a lot of programs that are currently trying to drive and support the public sector to improve diversity. I still sit in a number of meetings where I'm the only Metro Poly Asian that sits in the space, and so I'd like to see. And when I do see another colleague that's where we have similar characteristics, it's a chair, bro. Like it's quite cool,
Yeah.
and but I like to also think that we get there on our merits rather than just think it's about our color. And
Yeah.
so we just need to be able to, we need to make sure that we support diversity and give people the equal opportunity to be able to get in those places. Like I've been passed over for a couple of jobs, and I was told by a recruiter that actually, oh look, you had everything on paper, which was cool, but actually you just weren't a right fit. And I just wondered,
No, it's
what do
because
you
you're
mean by
brown,
that?
bro.
Yeah, and wouldn't say it. I had to push and said, oh, basically, look, I think you're just too Samoan for us.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I
gosh.
know, I know.
And there you
I
have it. And there you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
it. Holy shit, dude!
yeah,
I got a
yeah,
phone call probably. I remember this pretty clearly about a couple of years ago. One of my sort of mentors, he said, "Bro, you need to start to be a bit careful." I was like, "Oh, why is that, bro?" He's like, "Mate, because you pretty much can almost tick every box that the other side can exploit. The only thing you could do
yeah,
better right now is if you're a female and gay." And I just started cracking up. He's like, think about it,
oh,
young from the hood, culture,
mm,
tech, media, all this other, like just all this tick box shit. And then I got a phone call from a recruiter, and the recruiter goes, "Oh, think about this board position, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, boards." I was on the board of NZ Tech at the time, board of Figure NZ with Vic
yeah,
Crone and Stephen Lingen Hall, Lillian Grace, blah, blah.
right,
And then this other thing, I was like, "Oh, man, this would be rad," because I was thinking I'll just stuff it. I'll just go into all these big boards. I'll just roll up and just destroy shit. Let's change the game. Ga, 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 ga. And I was talking to
mm,
a few people about it, if it was the right call, and they basically all said, "Robett, don't do it. It's suicide. Paperwork. You'll go nuts. You won't be able to have as much effect as you think." Yada yada yada. And this from hitters. And I get a phone call from a recruiter, and the recruiter goes, "Yeah, so I've got this great opportunity. Really think that this will be right up your alley. Totally, like, definitely in your lane." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. What's the thing?" Blah blah. They're like, "Yeah. So we're the business," and I'm just trying to word it so I don't get you in trouble. But we're trying to figure out, got all this stuff, but we're really trying to do something about this Māori and Pacific Island thing.
oh yeah, yeah.
And
See
I
if
was
it's
like,
leading.
"Oh, okay." And so I was like, so just to be clear, this isn't actually about stuff like your issue is color, not actually the character or the substance or anything I could bring to the table. And I just flipping went off on the dude. I was just like, and I had to like rant and blah blah. But why I thought was interesting is because he had been briefed that they don't have someone that is brown in there that's young. He had been briefed that it's not someone that rolls a bit different, whether it be female or Asian or Indian, Māori, I don't give a shit. But the recruiter had been told, get me someone that knows media tech and brown. And then when he said it off the cuff of like, oh yeah, this Māori and Pacific Islander thing, bro, I gave it to him, mate. I was like, you stuff you. I just went off on his shit. So anyway, maybe, you're obviously a little bit older than me and you've been in that world crazy. How have you felt racism within government? Direct?
Oh, yeah. And look, I've
spoken or
been
unspoken?
Spoken or spoken. So there have been examples of that. And look, you don't sensationalize it as say as the Americans in terms of their experience. So, and I'm not saying they sensationalize, but they obviously received a lot more sharper. But here it's a bit more subtle. Like I said, with that previous example, I've got a master's, right? So, and I was the most qualified person in this role, and yet I would get a comment of, you're too Samoan for the branch. And then other times you would think about, people were trying to promote diversity. And so I was part of a huge team of 90. This was in Auckland, different time. And it's based in South Auckland. I won't name the organisation. And less than 5% lived in South Auckland. And we were talking about planning and funding decisions about, the community. And so, and a number of those people didn't get context and didn't understand community. So
they don't live there. 95% of them making the call and they don't there. Stuff them.
Yeah, they lived outside of there. So that's another example. I'd like to think that's probably a lot better now. And certainly there's been times where, like I talk about the housing example, just, when you walk in and areas like that, cafes, even in one time I walked in the Koro Lounge one time, and all my colleagues, all in suits, bar one who was really casually dressed. I was in my suit, and that I have had a Koro membership for a long time, and I got stopped at the door, and all of them walked through, and it says, "Oh, do you have membership?" And and the only thing that differentiated me between them and the others was my colour. I mean, maybe this probably think I was homeless, probably, but that's kind of, that's those are some of the examples.
What's because I've tried to explain to a few crew like different bits and pieces that happen, and they don't get the optics of it because they've never been in that spot, they've never felt it, they've never thing. And I still remember because I grew up in Aranui, Christchurch. I remember when I was in Snowboard Wood, I'd go over to the west side of town, and some of my friends were at Christ College and St Andrews. And distinctly, the first time I realised that this was a thing was when I went to the house party, 14, 15 years old, jumped the fence or whatever, got in, and then these girls are talking to my bros, and they're like, "Oh, what school do you go to?" It's like, "Oh, St Andrews." "Oh, what school do you go to?" "Oh, Christ College." "Oh, what school do you go to?" I was like, "Oh, Aranui." And they literally were like, "Ah." And I was like, I didn't think it was a thing, but then obviously as time goes on, I've got plenty of stories of that, and what I love now is I'll be honest, I do it deliberately. Is I'll roll up to some stuff and I'll dress down I'll just dress down thing, and I just walk in, but I come in super hot. And then what I've actually realized is there's something to it. When you hold yourself with so much confidence to roll through, and it's like past people, whatever, the energy instantly set. Your energy overshadows their judgment, and they let things fly because he must be something or she must be. And I've told other people to do the same thing because I've been in your spot too. You try to play the game, and then something happens and it gets a bit awkward, and that it's because of other things. So yeah, good on you, man. It's flipping a.
I have to share a story that once we were talking about working with another government agency in this space, and one of the things is because Kirkpatrick Mariner, right? When you think Kirkpatrick, you don't think of a Samoan guy.
No, not a Metro-Polynesian.
No, they're not a Metro-Polynesian, right? So anyway, so I had organised this meeting, and we're meeting with this other agency, and so we were going to their building. The receptionist looked me up and down, and thinking, and I had watched behaviour prior to that. Nobody was asked for their ID. I was asked for ID to prove that I was Kirkpatrick Mariner, so I did that. I presented that into his ID. Then I said, right, we'll just call the person to come down and see you, right? So I was sitting there, and the person that came down to receive me started walking up and down around the seating area, walked outside, and I didn't catch on that person was looking for me. And so they walked outside, walked back around, and then went back inside, talked to the receptionist, and she said, oh, he's over there. And she looked, and they'd had this horrified look on her face, like, and I just waved out and just said, oh, you're looking for Kirkpatrick, that's me.
Jeez.
and said basically, oh, you weren't what I was expecting.
Yep.
So
it sounds really like kind of like, we're just like, oh, and this so-and-so did this, but you remember it because those things shouldn't actually happen. And then when they do, you're kind of like, what the fuck, what? Like, this is stuff. Like, I remember when I was about 7 years ago, I wasn't as so much on social or whatever. And I was 26 at the time, and my sales manager was 38. And with top floor corner office, I had an office, I had an office, and people would come up to meet Robett, and they would come to the corner, and there's an intersection between our two doors, and they always be open, and they'd look on my side, they said, 26, and the bigger, like the 3 times bigger office, the office, and then they see his, like, still a nice office, but smaller, and they keep going into like, oh, hey, Robett here, and they're like, oh, no, he's next door, and it'd be this thing of like, they see young Māori dude, the office, and then they see, older middle-aged Pākehā guy and whatever, so which was everyone's got those stories. It's just funny that it definitely still exists, but it's clearly getting it's clearly getting better, and it's clearly there's more crew that look different, role different. Diversity has become very cool, and lots of ballrooms to talk about. It's become much more of a thing. So what I always, and I agreed to your point before, I don't want anyone to be there by default just because they are a certain thing. They should be there because they are the best for it, and they are also,
Yeah. Sorry, Robert, you paused.
Oh, there we go. We lost you for a second.
Yeah. Sorry. So I just caught your last bit about how you agreed with me about not everyone shouldn't be there based on their colour, but on merit. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll support that. Yeah,
I think
cool.
Yeah, they're still racist.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, there is that element of
that was the point of the story.
Yeah,
That's the racist.
Yeah. There's an element of prejudice that exists in some parts, but for what it's worth, I really enjoy being a public servant. I do it. I mean, and some of my views they don't necessarily align with some of my colleagues in this space, and so I might not get invited to key boardroom decisions or be able to participate because I might say what I really think in that space, and that might derail some of the processes. And I get that. It's part of my burden to wear in that. But generally, most of it is that I work with a group of people that work extremely hard. And particularly around COVID-19, the hours they were burning, it was just unbelievable just to help keep this country afloat. So I too, as a proud New Zealander, proud Metro-Polynesian New Zealander, is that I can look back on reflection later on and go, I was part of that. I was part of that response. We didn't get some things right, but I can say, I was part of that, and that's cool. That's a cool story to tell.
Yeah, keep it rolling. So no, I really appreciate your time, man. I know you're obviously busy man, got a bunch of different bits and pieces in the mix. So where to from here? What's the next big thing that you're the most excited for in this next month? Like, what are you the most hyped about to get into?
Yeah, so the best thing at the moment is that we'll have to recalibrate. We've got now um, people really understanding, coming to an understanding of what digital exclusion is versus digital inclusion. Working with agency partners to get some real shit done, which is really cool. And being able to work with industry and see what they're doing. I do a weekly wrap, or the team does a weekly wrap for me, and we put that out on LinkedIn just to talk about all the exciting developments that are happening in the sector, but also challenging us to make sure that we keep our finger on the pulse to ensure that whatever we develop meets the needs of the most disadvantaged in the community. So there's going to be a lot happening over the next few months, and I'm looking forward to working with the team to be able to just try to make our small difference in the world. So hopefully help New Zealanders. Sounds cliche, but it help New Zealanders move beyond kind of this event, and so yeah, hopefully making lives better at this point. So yeah,
Well,
that's me, man.
you've to be public servant for so long, and obviously the execution and the passion is there for what you're doing and how you're doing it, and it's rad because now all these things have come to the forefront, and in many ways the moves that you're making now is going to have that legacy impact. You're talking about three of the women leaders have been three of the five
Yeah.
you're saying have been women in the last
Yeah.
15 years or whatever, like it's 20 years. That's amazing. So
Sorry, bro, I lost you.
oh, we lost you again. We got
There
you.
you go. Yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah,
there.
got you. Yeah,
Tech,
cool.
mate. I
Yeah.
was giving you props. I was saying you're awesome. You're fucking awesome, Kirkpatrick. Well done.
No, thank you for doing what you do, man, and thank you for that. This is an awesome opportunity to be able to talk from the heart, I think, in terms of the stuff we're doing. So, and yeah, I appreciate you giving us some time on the week. It's awesome.
Bro,
Cool.
100%, man. I love your work, bro. And I'll talk to you soon, man. Appreciate it. And stay out of trouble down in Wellington.
Okay.
Later,
Cheers.
brother. Shaji. The bro. Kirkpatrick Mariner. Good yarns. I would not have thought that 1% of staff there would have been Māori or Pacifica. I think that the whole idea, digital access is a right, is Wi-Fi a human right? That's flipping pretty. It's a big banter. It's a big chat. And as well, it's funny. Everyone who's ever experienced either, racism or judgment or gender equality or whatever the thing is, you've always can remember those stories, and they sit pretty deep, and they make a difference. When you can kind of try and beat them in your own way, I guess. So that's so it's pretty close to home for me anyway. All right, team. Enjoy the rest of the day. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. Peace.